Now that I've reassembled the main rifle, this is the butt flask. The Girardoni normally had a spherical end on it. What I did is I machined this one with a flat end so that I could place a gauge in it. Normally I have a larger gauge, but when I'm finished it will have the smaller gauge. It will be an end cap, so I'll actually be able to view the pressure. This is the business end here for the valve. A pin wrench. Just loosen it up and the valve unscrews. And we've made a fancy little wrench here out of a couple of coins. I made a mold. It's a little pin wrench that we'd made two different types of guns. One was a Lucan's, and this one, both of them have been in contention for the Lewis and Clark gun. So these are actually the coins that Lewis and Clark would hand the Indians when they met them. And then we cast the base, made it a pin wrench, just for entertainment. In here, there's the valve head and spring. I don't know how well we can see it in this thing. Let me see if I can zero in here. There we go. You can see the guide for the valve, and there's an O-ring down in there. Okay. This design allows me to have just one thread for the entire valve and one seal, one O-ring. So simplifies things. The valve head, as you can see, it has the two pinholes. The valve seat is tapered, and I've made various ones to test different things. Different orifice diameters, different valve seat angles, different inner diameters for shrouding. The valve heads are basically a Delrin. I take some 1/4-inch water hardening stock, machine that, thread it on the end, make a nut, and then I use a drill reamer blank as the rod itself. And then different size springs are used. I have a bag of, these are all different heads that we've been testing over time, different O-rings, different types of springs, etc. Settled on this basic design for right now for a balance between efficiency and power. So, to reiterate, here we have this. This fits into that guide. That's actually an oil light bushing that I had machined and placed inside there. So this has a nice smooth spring, so you have basically a hardened drill rod, again, you know, oil light bushing, so there's not a lot of movement there. Then this falls in there. You can thread it part way. Take our fancy unit here. This is actually one of the small diameter. So this one gives me lower power but a lot more shot count as a smaller orifice, but that's not what I want to shoot today. So let's take this one out. And this is the one I want. This is about a 300 thousandths orifice. The other was about a 270. And this one's a little easier to use. And then I have one that's a 320. Gives me a lot of power, but only about 10 good shots. This one will give me about 20 shots, averaging over 100 foot-pounds. If I want to torque this down a little more, I have a hole in the side, and I can give it a little. It doesn't need a lot because it is an O-ring. Okay, so that's reassembled. To fill this, I have made out of brass using a Foster fitting and an O-ring. Little adapter, threads in, give a little oomph, and it's ready to hook up to your pump, scuba tank, whatever it is that you might want to fill it with. So that is the flask and valve. Then, after it is filled, this comes off. You can see here the pin is backwards because it was fired, but it pushes forward. That pin will actuate in that little, you can see I have a indent in the head of the valve. When this pin comes out, it hits that, so it keeps itself centered. This is a little tricky here to start. Normally I lay one down, but to be able to see what's going on, there we go. And there we have the butt flask on the gun. Okay, other details here. So now you can see the mass of the hammer is quite large, and it turns out that that gives a lot more energy to the valve system, because if you remember when the wedge was up high, this thing has a fair amount of inertia before it strikes open the valve. That allows you to get a fair amount of power. I fired this gun up. Theoretically, in the literature, people talk about 800, 850 psi in the flask. I fired this gun up to 1400 psi, and with no problem. Okay. More details here. Here we have the rear sight. This is all Whitesmith by Hank, fire blued, magazine tube. The cap of the magazine tube was quite a little piece there. This is a spring steel latch with a spring, so you push this up, slide this open, the balls fall in, holds 20 balls, 457 caliber on this particular gun. Those will go against the breech here. Normally when you would fire it, you would be holding the gun like this, okay? Then the heel of this hand with the gun tilted upward would allow a ball to fall in there, relaxing it at the same time that you would cock it. So if nobody knew what you were doing, they just thought you were picking the gun up, and you can fire the gun. Okay. This leaf spring here is made out of actually a hay tine. It was forged and then bent, brought in, and then re-hardened. So that, holds that in there very well. Moving forward, we have a brass front sight. I have not trimmed off the sides here yet. Still doing a little bit of sighting. There is a bronze nose cap, very finely inlet into the walnut. The pipes for the ramrods were waxed and cast also in bronze. The inlet one is very nicely inlet again. The reason it has a ramrod, even though it's not a breech loader, is they probably had it so you could a jag or something like that to clean it. Also, if you fired without enough air, the ball could end up in the barrel. So you can push it back down into the breech. The sling, there's a swivel here that goes through the lug. This is actually the original, probably had a narrower sling. We thought it would be a little uncomfortable for us. We like stuff a little bulkier, so we went with a heavier sling. The rear sling swivel goes through a lug in the trigger guard here. As you can see now, we have the bronze side plate has been affixed. Any other details I'm missing here? I'm sure somebody will make a comment. But anyway, so there we have the completed air gun.